All right guys, so tip number 1 starts with our warm up and making sure we open up our shoulders before we get into our workout. This is because a lot of us nowadays are hunched over with our shoulders. We're closed off, and by having our shoulder rotated inward, we actually lose some stability when we're pressing overhead and pulling, versus if we start to open up our shoulder, set it down, reconnect it with our core, we get way more stability, and our ability to lift and move becomes that much greater. So take the time before we get into the workout to explore ranges of motion of the shoulder, working to open, first of all, our pecs, so our chest area, because that is what attaches into our shoulder's internal rotation, or the shoulder pulling in. So we actually want to think about opening up the shoulder. So things such as field goals to the sides, anything where we're separating the shoulder away from the chest is a great starting place. Another area that's really tight on people is the lats. Okay, so the side muscles in our back here. This will limit our ability to press overhead because the lat actually pulls our shoulder forward if it's tight. Now, if we work to lengthen it, especially in an overhead position, we'll be able to stabilize and move that shoulder in a more effective way, which limits any type of injury we may occur, keeps the shoulder in a better position, and allows us to lift more in the gym. So take that time at the beginning of your workout to open up the body. For tip number 2, we're gonna talk about stabilizing the lift and also keeping the joints properly stacked when we're going through the range of motion with our shoulders. So starting with stabilizing the lift, when we're doing an exercise such as the seated shoulder press, or any upper body movement, you want to think about what you're doing with your shoulders here, okay? So you'll notice how I have the weight at my side, so I don't have to stabilize or do much with the weight yet, but as soon as I start bringing the weight out to the sides, now I have to start working. So getting that press stable, notice how my back is flat, my wrists are stacked over my elbows, and my shoulders are pinned down in the bench. From here, I'm gonna press directly overhead and back down. So see how my shoulders stay stacked down away from my ear as I'm going through the range of motion. And I'm controlling those joint angles in a way that my wrists aren't coming inside or outside my elbow, they're staying directly in line. Another thing to keep in mind is when I'm pressing, I want to press directly up. Oftentimes people experience a lot of front shoulder pain if they start pressing forward, away from their midline, rather than directly overhead. So when that occurs, I start pressing, I have to start stabilizing a lot more with my shoulder, and I'm already feeling a lot more pressure there. So again, I'm pressing forward with my shoulder, a lot more tension and stress, versus if I keep that weight directly over and straight up overhead as I'm pressing. Hey guys, so for tip number 3 with keeping our shoulders safe and secure when we're doing upper body movements is actually starting from the ground up with our feet and establishing a strong base of support. This is important because when we're lifting overhead, we want to be able to use the shoulder in its fullest capability by having a strong base to press off of. So let's go into looking what that actually looks like here, okay? So when I'm going to set up, I want my feet to be about shoulder width apart. So I really take that extra second to get them stable. Then I'm squeezing my hips tight. So if I have my hips and my pelvis in a position where it's neutral instead of rounded back, I neutralize the pelvis. Now I can leverage my shoulder in a better way to press directly overhead, okay? Making sure that that's tight, then I'm gonna breathe after I level my pelvis or squeeze my hips. I'm then gonna take a deep breath in, engage the core. Now I'm totally straight up. Then I'm gonna press, drive overhead, and back down, okay? So notice how when I press overhead, my low back stays totally straight and doesn't move forward at all. Keeping that bar nice and close as I'm pressing overhead. That's why it's important to have a strong base, because again, when I have my pelvis neutral and forward, now my spine is now in a more upright position, and I have a stronger base for that shoulder to press from. Because for example, if I didn't set my hips and my feet properly during that movement, I would actually start to overarch my back when I'm starting to press. So instead of tight, core tight, hips tight, shoulder width apart, pressing directly overhead with integrity, I'm now starting to compromise my low back. And you see a lot of people, they'll start to extend their low back as they press overhead because they don't have as much mobility and stability in their shoulders. So really be aware when you're doing this movement, set up tight core, braced hips, driving as a unit up overhead, and you'll find your low back feels better, your shoulders are in a better position, and you can press more weight too in a safe manner. All right guys, so tip number 5 is leaving your ego at the door. Now, what I mean by that is I'm not saying we shouldn't load our exercises in a progressive manner, but I am saying that too many people focus so much on how much weight they're putting on the bar, and they don't spend enough time focusing on the technique, setting their shoulders in a stable position, and learning how to do the movement efficiently and effectively before they start adding weight. So especially as a beginner, guys, let's look to add smaller amounts of weight, thinking about keeping our shoulders set and stable, and going through the process of learning the movement and mastering it before we start to overload it. Because speaking from someone that has dealt with shoulder injuries before, it can be a big problem. It can set you back months. So why don't we just build up slowly, build how much stability we can use in the shoulder, and then over time our gains will be more. I hope you guys found this video helpful. Please consider subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing, and we'll see you in the next video.